It is mid-year book tag time, which means I have a ton of books to talk about. Now, there's only 7 in this pile, but the mid-year book tag is a list of 13 questions that YouTubers have been talking about the past few years, so I thought, why not? I'll give it a try. If you're new to my channel, hi, my name is Allison. Welcome. I do a lot of things that are comfy and cozy, from reading to cooking to self-care, weekends, and I mix it up with some travel as well. I travel pretty frequently, and in fact, I just got back from Japan, so make sure to check out that video. So just one housekeeping item before I jump in. Again, I do have a pile of 7 books. Well, there's 13 questions. The reason there's a few missing is that my dad also is an avid reader, so we like to share books with one another. He has quite a few of my best reads currently in his stack. And also there is one new release on this list of questions, so it's not in my hands quite yet. So with that being said, let's jump right in. And question number 1, of course, is what is the best book you've read so far this year? And without a doubt, it is for me The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And a lot of the books on my list are going to be about very charming characters, a handful of them in their 70s and 80s. It's just been that kind of year. But this woman named Sybil has been through a lot in her life. She's a former lawyer, she's a mother, grandmother, divorcee, and she loves to write. That is her joy at this stage of life in her 70s. And at 10 o'clock each day, she sits down with a pen and paper and starts writing letters. She also strikes up correspondence with customer care representatives through email. Any way she can correspond, she does it. The book says that when letters from someone in her past force her to examine one of the most painful periods of her life, she realizes that the letter she has been writing over the years needs to be read, and that she cannot move forward until she finds it in her heart to offer forgiveness. She's dealing with something really big in her life right now that needs to be resolved. So not only is this a joy to read, but it is heartwarming as well, and it is such a quick book to get through. Most of the chapters are 2 to 3 pages long. If you need something to jumpstart your reading again, if you're in a slump, this is the one for you. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read this year? And while it's not technically a sequel, it is part of a series, and this is book number 5 in the Windy Cities sports romance series. It's called Rewind It Back by Liz Tomford. And I absolutely loved the relationship between characters Rio and Hallie in this book. Rio is on a hockey team, and he's been featured throughout the first 4 books of the Windy City sports romance series in Chicago, but it's finally his chance for love. And he is so lovable because he's been pining over Hallie since they were kids. So it's kind of a friends to lovers situation. There's some situation that forced them apart for the past 6 years, and now they're both in their mid-20s and reconnecting. What Liz Tomford does so well is the banter. So even though there's not necessarily spice right away, I can't recall because it's been about 6 months since I read this one, so this may be a spicy one, but the banter and just the hint of romance to come between the two is just so well done by Liz. I did really enjoy most of this series, but this just hit the best, so highly, highly recommend. Question number 3 on the list is, what is a new release you haven't read yet but want to? For this one, I just got it delivered yesterday. It is Annabelle Monaghan's Dolly All the Time. This is a contemporary romance, and I have to be honest, I've heard mixed reviews about Annabelle Monaghan's previous novels, but the reviews for Dolly All the Time have been off the charts, and I can't wait to get into this one. So I won't read the whole back summary, but just the first sentence really gets me in love with this character already. Dolly Brick has never met a problem she couldn't solve. So right there, we have an independent woman, and I'm all over that. But she is 39 years old. I do like to read romance novels with characters in their 30s or 40s, so that caught my eye that she's 39, and it's set in Rhode Island. I think it's going to be a very charming setting. The main male character is Stuart Whitfield, and he sounds like a rich guy, very privileged, and just went through a very public breakup. Normally I don't go for those types of books, but this one seems like it might work. Dolly might set him straight. So we'll see how this romance turns out, but again, a lot of great reviews online, so I am ready for Dolly all the time. Question number 4 is a no-brainer for me. The most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I gotta go with my girl Allie Hazelwood with her series Bound and Unbound. Now you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 physical copies of books from Allie Hazelwood on my shelf, and I've read every single one of her books. She's one of my favorite romance authors. Bound and Unbound is another paranormal romance, much like Allie Hazelwood's Bride and the sequel Mate. I ate up these books, vampire and werewolf romances, but a whole different twist that is not like Twilight. I loved these 2 books, and so I can't wait for Bound and Unbound. So that's coming out, I believe, this fall. That would be a perfect fall romance to get into. Now, question number 5, I might get a little heat for. It is the biggest disappointment so far this year. And if you've seen my book reviews, you'll know that I talked about Into the Blue by Emma Brody, and I gave it 3.5 stars. There's a ton of people out there who absolutely devoured this book and gave it 5 stars. But in my book review, I talked about the fact that it is so nerdy and spoofy, and I did not enjoy the characters, and they were quite annoying to me for about 3/4 of the book. It is a wonderful love story. In the last 25% of the book, the setup is that AJ and a famous actor, Noah Drew, are acting together when they are teens or early 20s, and then they are separated for 7 whole years. And out of the blue, AJ doesn't know why Noah left, but they get back together on intergalactic show that they rename as Into the Blue. Well, the show Into the Blue doesn't make a very big splash, but it does bring these characters back together, and the romance develops from there. So, like I said, the end of the book was amazing, but there was a lot of dirty stuff that I just wasn't into the first part of the book. So kudos to Emma for a big hit, because she does have a very big following after this book, but it just wasn't for me. Question number 6 is, what is your biggest surprise so far this year? And I have to go with Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is a science fiction book, and normally I go for romance and thrillers, so this was out of my normal genre, but I knew there was a movie coming out starring Ryan Gosling, and this book was very much hyped up last year by the booktube community. So I thought, let's give it a try, and I'm so glad I did. This nerdy guy, Ryland Grace, is out to save the world, not necessarily willingly, but he's out in another galaxy. He's been in a coma for 4 years. That was their way of protecting his health while he got out into that other galaxy. And now he's got to save the Earth because there's stuff called astrophage that is eating away at the sun. Well, the Earth isn't going to last without the sun. Ryland Grace is such a dork, but he's a lovable dork. But also, how could I not fall in love with Rocky, the alien that he meets and teams up with in this story? Again, sci-fi is not my thing, but Ryland Grace and his buddy Rocky make it work. It's pretty dense with math and science facts, but you can still get through it without fully understanding what's going on. You know what the mission is, and you know the connection between Ryland and Rocky and the people back on Earth. So Highly recommend this. And then just about a month later, I could not wait to get into The Martian because this was such a hit for me. I read The Martian by Andy Weir, another sci-fi by him, and that was published a few years earlier. Also awesome. So I will read anything else that Andy Weir puts out. Question number 7 is, who is your favorite new author, either a debut author or just simply new to you? And my pick is Sarah Damoff, and I do not have the books with me. They are with my dad, but she wrote The Bright Years that came out last year in 2025, and then her newest release in 2026 was The Burning Side. And I gave 5 stars to both of those books. Her writing is just so beautiful. It's not overly flowery, but man, she paints such a picture, and she builds connections between her main characters so well. Very emotional stories, but relatable stories, and I just can't wait to read more by Sarah Damoff. So congratulations to Sarah for 2 great opening novels. Question number 8 is, who is your newest fictional crush? And I have to go with George from Our Perfect Storm by Carly Fortune. I did a book review on this, and I believe that was a 5-star book for me, maybe 4.5. But George and Frankie, short for Francesca, have known each other since 8 years old. They were neighbors and bonded and have even lived together throughout the years, but George is more of a world traveler now, so it's harder to connect. But they connect when Frankie is ready to get married to a man she's only known for 1 year. George does everything to build back Frankie's heart after she gets her heart trampled on the day before her wedding. Her fiance leaves her at the altar, essentially. So George ends up whisking her away to Tofino Island, which was the intended honeymoon for the new couple. But George and Frankie go instead. George is just handsome, he is charming. The banter between these two in Our Perfect Storm just hit the spot. I love male characters who are secretly pining after their love interest, and this one is essentially a 22-year slow burn between George and Frankie, and you know something special is going to happen in this book, and George just treats her like a princess and tries to repair her broken heart, and along the way romance ensues. So George is my favorite crush of the year. Let's see if anyone can beat him the rest of the year in 2026. I would have to say George's closest competition is the answer to my next question, which is number 9, newest favorite character. This is Theo from Theo of Golden. Well, how old is Theo? He's 87 years old, competing with 30-year-old George from the previous answer. But Theo is just so charming, and he is helpful to everyone in this community called Golden in Georgia. But he's also a mystery man. He doesn't give out his last name, and you don't find out till the very end of the book what is his true background. But Theo is a giver, he's a charmer, he's a very dapper gentleman from Portugal. He knows the fine things in life, but he enjoys all the simple things in life too, and just spreads joy throughout the town of Golden. So I fell in love with Theo, and I fell in love with this book for sure. Theo of Golden by Alan Levi. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. Well, I'm not really a crier, but something that was close to getting tears from me was The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that last name incorrectly, but this was a tremendous saga set in South India. The book, The Covenant of Water, is over 700 pages, and it features the life story of a girl at 12 years old all the way up into her 80s. And she becomes the matriarch of the family, referred to as Big Amachi. And Big Amachi is probably not even 5 feet tall. but she protects her loved ones and the community, and all of the connections that build from Bigamachi's life are incredible. Just a beautifully woven story over several decades. And of course, there's tragedies and joy and loss along the way in that time frame, and that will bring you to tears because it is such an investment in Bigamachi and all of the characters that surround her in this life. But what a beautiful story. I will be reading more by this author. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy. And while there were certainly a lot of books this year that made me happy because I've had incredible reads, one that stood out was Good Joy, Bad Joy by Mickey Brammer. And this is another story where someone's in their 80s, nearing the end of life, but still living life to the fullest. Unfortunately, Joy's closest friend learned that she has terminal cancer, just has months to live, and that really jolts awake Joy. Of course, she wants to help her friend in her last months of life, but also it sets her on a path to rediscover herself. She's always been good Joy and following the rules, being a proper daughter and wife and mother, but now she's going rogue, and that includes smoking some weed and shoplifting and quite a few other things that get her into a bit of trouble. But she becomes a wild child, and I loved Joy when she was good, and I loved her when she was bad. So it made me happy just to see someone rediscover themselves and have a wild ride while doing it. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful book that you've bought this year? And that is one that my dad has a hold of right now, but it's called This Book Made Me Think of You by Libby Page. And the book is just in pastels, blues and pinks, and it has a stack of books on it. Those are some of my favorite colors, and it is just a charming book cover, and ended up being one of my favorite books of the year. Another story of rediscovering oneself. In this book, Tilly has lost the love of her life, her husband Joe, in the past year to a terminal disease, and so she is having a tough go of it. But she learns from the local bookseller Alfie that Joe has left her one book a month that Alfie will distribute to her each month, and that was meant by Joe to restart her life. He knew she was going to have a rough time after he passed. So the books are simple things like a romance novel, to cookbooks, to travel books, and wild camping books. Well, Alfie ends up helping her on a lot of these books and the missions that come out of the books, and along the way they develop a strong bond, and it might just end up in romance. The book cover certainly sold me, and I'm glad it did because that was one of my favorite books of the year. Drum roll, please. Question number 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year, in 2026 in this case? And for me, it is Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke. Yesteryear, along with Into the Blue by Emma Brody, have been the hottest books talked about in 2026 midway through the year. And I just have been hesitant to pick up Yesteryear because I know it's about a trad wife who gets sent back in time to, I believe, the 1800s, 1900s, and learns how hard it is to be a real trad wife. But I hear that she's not the most lovable character, so I'm worried I'm gonna be annoyed by her the whole book. But it is so highly talked about and recommended and intriguing, so I am curious to read it. So I will pick up Yesteryear and get through it by the end of this year. It does sound like a fun, wild ride. Well, that was my first mid-year book review ever, and I had a fun time. I hope you guys did too. Hopefully this video was helpful to you and you have a lot of new book suggestions to read for the remainder of 2026. And make sure, if you are enjoying reviews like these, you subscribe so you don't miss the next book review video. Well, I hope you're staying cozy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!